I'm Rachel, and I'm here to do my April 30th through May 6th AM rating update. I figured I'd start with the last book that I officially started in April. This is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. It is a dystopian novel that was written during the 20s in the Soviet Union, one of the earliest modern dystopian novels. This is a novel about a far future totalitarian state where the idea of individuality is almost completely eradicated. People are known by numbers and live their lives by strict mathematical, philosophical precepts. And then, of course, the main character is led astray by a tempting woman, and he experiences doubt about the system and grows something called a soul. Anyway, I reviewed this and 8 other books that I read in April in my April 2018 newsletter that I publish monthly on my blog, where I provide snippets from my Goodreads reviews, and I offer a look into my recent TBR picks, and I highlight some news of the bookish world that has been of interest to me, and share a picture from my Bookstagram and more, so I'll leave that link down below. And the first book that I started and finished in May is Dinner at the Center of the Earth by Nathan Nicklander. This is part of my self-directed list of Jewish fiction published in English in 2017 that I want to get to. This novel is a parable, really, about Israeli politics and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, more specifically, and that tenable idea of peace and violence, the cyclical nature of the violence that grips the country. It's a novel that's told from the perspectives of prisoner Z, who is a prisoner in an undisclosed location. He was an Israeli spy, American-born, but Israeli citizen who botched up a major operation and now lives in the middle of the Negev desert, where only a couple of people even know that he's alive, including the general, who is very much based off of Ariel Sharon, who is a man who is very enigmatic in his own way, known to some for his extreme cruelty, the crimes that some might say that he committed early on in Israel's existence, all in the service, in his mind, of attempting to shield the Jewish state from further harm. He's also known as the Prime Minister who removed the final Jews from Gaza to give back to the Palestinians. And anyway, this novel is largely told when he's in a coma for 8 years, and it's just a way to take a sweeping look back at his political decisions. And then there are other characters in this as well. I guess the other two most notable ones are an Israeli woman and a Palestinian man who fall in love. They're two people that are committed to the peace process that never really has come to fruition, but they're looking for a chance to be together, and he's in Gaza and she's in Israel, and there's not a lot of chances for them to meet. And so the center of the earth is very much about that space in between Gaza and Israel, and I guess I'll leave it there. It's a very interesting book, but I don't necessarily think the style is for me. You know, it's not about nuanced, complex characters. It's very much a book that sort of plainly talks about large philosophical and political movements. And so it's arresting, but I don't think it's necessarily the type of book that usually draws me in, so I'm still grappling with it. It's a book that very much, I guess, exists outside of the reality as we know it, and through its pages tries to conduct a proto-reality that is supposed to get to a larger truth. And with that in mind, I decided to get to this novel, The Age of Miracles by Karen Thompson Walker. And what do you know? It's blurbed on the back by Nathan Nicklander. Another reason I wanted to get to this book ASAP is really kind of silly, but this is speculative fiction. And recently, Elizabeth from Books and Pieces touted a speculative fiction novel in one of her videos that really intrigued me, and it's called The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord. It's a novel that takes place on a planet out there in the universe. It's about societal clashes and discord on an interplanetary level, and the way that Elizabeth described it really piqued my interest in a way that she did for the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers, of which I've now read the first 2 books and I'm absolutely in love with them, so I figured I should go with my gut and take Elizabeth's advice again. So I removed this speculative fiction book from my Goodreads TBR so that I could add that one. But anyway, this is a book that is highly scientifically inaccurate about the Earth randomly slowing down and in its rotation, and the days are slowly getting longer, and from my scant scientific aptitude, I would assume this would immediately cause a lot of catastrophe, whereas in this book the changes in lifestyle to these people are a lot slower and slower coming, and in a way more psychological than physiological, although there is definitely some physical changes to gravity and all of that, but really the impetus of this novel is about psychological change. I mean, in a way it feels a lot like an allegory of grief or of depression and what that feels like. It feels like the Earth slows and that nothing physical or scientific or rational makes sense anymore. That's how I kind of see this, and it's told from the perspective of a young adolescent girl in California. And a lot of what she is dealing with her classmates is a lot more realist about just changes in social groups and social behaviors and burgeoning personalities. So it's not at all realist in the real world, this whole premise, but I really like it so far. I'm about halfway through. I don't know, maybe it's my bias about the plight of a young teenage girl and her changing reality speaking to me. But at the same time, even though the premise of the book is really out there, I feel like the characters are grounded. So I think that's something that speaks to me. I always just need grounded, nuanced characters, and they exist here. I'm much more okay with the plot being woo, or the premise being woo, than the characters. So that's why I'm into this book. Going along with We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, I decided to stick in the Soviet Union for a while, but move on to nonfiction. This is When They Come For Us We'll Be Gone, The Epic Struggle to Save Soviet Jewry by Gal Beckerman. This is a book that I picked up for my Sammy Rohr Prize reading. The Sammy Rohr Prize honors emerging Jewish authors in fiction or nonfiction. Every year it alternates between fiction or nonfiction, and for this month I'm trying to chronicle the nonfiction books that were considered in 2012. I have 3 books from the list that I'm considering, and this one is a social history about Soviet Jews. So I'll read from the flap. At the end of World War II, nearly 3 million Jews were trapped inside the Soviet Union. They lived a paradox, unwanted by a repressive Stalinist state, yet forbidden to leave. Those who tried were followed by the KGB, often denied jobs and higher education, even forced into menial labor or imprisoned simply for studying Hebrew or gathering with other Jews. When They Come For Us We'll Be Gone is the astonishing and inspiring account of their rescue. It is one of the great exodus stories of modern times. Journalist Gal Beckerman draws on newly released Soviet government documents, as well as hundreds of interviews with refuseniks, activists, Zionist hooligans, and congressional staffers. He shows how small acts of defiance in the Soviet Union turned into an open struggle waged by thousands when protested in the streets, and a small group who even plotted to hijack a plane and fly it over the border. The attempted hijacking ignited an international movement of neocons, peaceniks, Democrats, Republicans, literary figures, human rights activists. It galvanized the American Jewish community, teaching it to flex its political muscle and giving it a renewed sense of spiritual purpose. Indeed, it helped end the Cold War by putting human rights at the center of the American foreign policy for the first time. The battle to save Soviet Jews, at its heart, is a story about people against power. This multi-generational saga, filled with suspense and packed with revelations, tells of the heroic individuals who, unable to accept an immoral status quo, stood up to a superpower and emerged victorious. Spoiler alert! In fact, I think a couple of years ago, or maybe last year at the Jewish Film Festival, I went and saw a documentary about this plane hijacking that was produced by one of the daughters of the plane hijackers. And this is my standard, I'm looking forward to this, but it is hella long. 535 pages without the notes, acknowledgments, index, and etc. And it's making me very nervous about my reading list and what I hope to get through in May, but I would like to tell myself to push all of that aside as much as I can and hopefully get some good stuff out of this book. There's a lot of great history in here to learn about. And finally, this is one of my anticipated releases of 2018 that I talked about at the beginning of the year. It just came out and I just got it from the library. This is The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. It is a fiction novel that chronicles the life of Remy, who is a prisoner at a women's correctional facility in California. She's in prison for murder. And what really appealed to me about the setup of this book is that it seems like it's like a microcosm community, that, you know, prison becomes its own community of people taking on new roles and learning to live in this smaller infrastructure. And that reminds me of what one of my favorite authors, Allegra Goodman, does so well in looking at insular little communities. And I'm hoping that Rachel Kushner can also do that. And with a morally gray character, because, you know, this woman is there for murder. So I'm not expecting her to be a white hat. I just hope she's not a complete black hat either. So, yeah, and I know that Peg from Peg the Book Prize Addict has recent access to this book as well. She might be finished with it before I am, but it's almost like we'll be doing a buddy read if I get to this soon enough. And that about covers it for me. Another week of struggling to stay on top of my reading TBR. I gotta remind myself that reading should continue to remain fun. And it does, but I am in that stage of wondering if I'm pushing myself too far in the quantity requirements that I'm putting on myself. But that's why I'm trying to remind myself to read fast, because there's so much I want to read, but not to lose heart about it, so maybe I'll have to find a new equilibrium soon. But for now, this is my plate full. These are my goals. I don't actually have a whole lot going on this week. Tonight, I'm filming this Monday night, I had my writing group where I very nervously presented my climax chapter of my novella, and it went over better than I feared it would, so huzzah, and I'm hoping to start editing that later this week, given other people's critiques. And other than that, my major plans in the evening tend to be television shows. This is a major TV time for me, where a lot of shows that I'm interested in have come back on the air. So it's cool to watch TV, but I guess I hope that I don't get too sucked into that, because I got some reading to do. And this weekend I'm going back to the DC Jewish Film Fest. I mentioned the Jewish Film Fest earlier in the video, and this year, as always, there's a whole lot of options of movies to watch, and I'm personally centering on a couple of Bollywood-themed movies. Well, one of them is a documentary about Jews in Bollywood, like in mid-20th century, and then another one is one of the famous movies starring a Jewish Bollywood actress. And The idea of Jews in Bollywood has been something that's intrigued me for a long time. I used to watch a little bit of Bollywood and rent some videos, although it's been a little while. It's such a beautiful, if melodramatic, art form. So I'm very excited to spend a day in the theater in the Jewish Bollywood scene. So yeah, that's what's going on with me in reading and other things this week. I hope that you're also having productive or fun weeks. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.